Hey y'all, it's Meredith and today I'm going to teach you about Aemilia Lanyer. If you don't know who she is, that's fine. I didn't either until a couple weeks ago, and I'm getting paid to research her. Lanyer is a contemporary of Shakespeare's, which puts her in the late 1500s, early 1600s. We don't have much of her work, but what we do have is in her poetry collection called Salve Deus Rex Judaeorum, which is Latin for Hail God, King of the Jews. It's a series of 9 poems published in 1611. Most of these poems are dedicatory poems, which means they're written to a person, usually rich ladies. The poem I want to look at today is called To the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty. This would be Queen Anne. It took me an absurdly long time to figure out which queen she was talking about in this poem. Way longer than a paid research assistant is supposed to do. To the Queen's Most Excellent Majesty is a pretty long poem, so I'm actually just going to talk about 6 lines with you. What lines are these? So here are lines 85 to 90. For here I have prepared my paschal lamb, the figure of that living sacrifice, who, dying, all the infernal powers o'ercame, that we with him to eternity might rise. This precious Passover feed upon, O Queen, let your fair virtues in my glass be seen. I think it's really important to note just how bold of statements that Lanyer is making here. Lanyer is basically calling her poem Jesus. For here, I have prepared my paschal lamb. Paschal referring to Passover or Easter. She's talking about this poem as something she has created to be like the figure of that living sacrifice, Jesus. In a way, she's calling her poem Jesus, but she's also kind of saying that through her poem you can see Jesus, like later on she calls it her glass. Let your fair virtues in my glass be seen. This is an extended metaphor that goes through like the whole poem, but I think one of the boldest things that Lanyer does here is found in the 4th line, and it's really just one word, that we with him to eternity might rise. If you think about the scene that Lanyer is depicting here, it's kind of like this revelation, ascension, kind of salvation-y sort of thing, but particularly the idea of souls ascending into heaven. She doesn't say that we will be raised, but that we will rise. And if you look in the Bible at other examples of resurrections, they're raised. The bones in the desert that Ezekiel sees, those are raised by God. Lazarus is raised by Jesus. Jesus is a weird example because he's raising himself. Trinitarian doctrine. But generally in Christianity, we accept that people are not capable of raising themselves back from the dead. The fact that she says that we might rise to eternity gives the believer a whole lot more autonomy. But she's making this very anti-Calvinist statement, where Calvinism says that you don't have any choice in whether or not you were saved by God. Lanyer is saying that you have autonomy, that you, as a potential believer, might rise. You are not might be raised. You might rise with him. Lanyer establishes an equality between Jesus and the people who rise with him with just one word, and not even the word, it's the tense of the word. It's not tense. That's voice. Something as particular as the voice of a verb can completely change the meaning of a poem. I realize not everybody has the same grammar nerd background that I do. Voice usually refers to who is completing the action in a sentence. Billy kicked the ball. The ball was kicked by Billy. Well, the ball isn't doing anything, it's the object. So when you put the object up front, that puts it in passive voice. The book was raised by Meredith. It doesn't do anything. It's a book. That's kind of how voice works in English. That we with him to eternity might be raised would have a really different effect. It would be acting like we are dead and helpless and incapable of going to eternity even after Jesus has already overcome all the infernal powers. Now, if you're not religious, I know this might seem kind of pointless to you, but I think it's really important to understand different people's ideas about the autonomy of the soul. And then the equality. We are rising with Christ, not Christ rises and we all float up. So remember this, voice matters. Oh, all the infernal powers. My screen went